Why do widowed men die earlier than widowed women? All sorts of studies point to men being generally worse at being single than women. The reasons for this are multifaceted and not entirely explored, but it's a combination of social, emotional, and physical factors. Men in relationships, for instance, tend to see doctors a lot more regularly than single men. They also tend to have more robust social support systems. Add in the fact that even today, many men never really learn how to cook, clean, and care for themselves, and you can see why they may not thrive if they end up on their own. Because women, generally raised from birth to take care of everyone including themselves, are much more self-sufficient. In the US at least, I think a lot of men in general don't have a strong social network like women. It's tough to make friends as an adult on top of this, so I'd assume older women have more friends than older men. It's difficult to make good choices when you don't have social support, easier to fall into unhealthy patterns, easier to avoid medical care without someone reminding you to go, and most importantly, easier to not care and sort of slip away. I think it's pretty obvious that widowed men, especially since this typically means older, and therefore more traditional men, do a far worse job of taking care of themselves without a wife to help, motivate, or even do it for them. I know of couples where the man will not make his own doctor's appointments. Imagine how he's going to do if his wife dies before him. My grandpa hadn't the first clue how to cook for himself. My grandma went on vacation with one of the kids once and he ate out every meal that week. It would have been very unlikely that he would have learned to cook in his 70s if she outlived him. I can think of several other examples of older men in my family whose wives either died or divorced them, and it's easy to see how their level of care dropped afterwards. Older men likely were raised in a society where gender roles were a major thing and simply never learned to take care of themselves. They went straight from being fed and cleaned up after by their mothers to being fed and cleaned up after by their wives. Because having a wife is a lot better for your health than being the wife is. It's the same reason most widowed women don't remarry, or why many divorced women refuse to consider marriage again. Married men live longer lives than their single counterparts. Married women live shorter lives than their single counterparts. Wives often encourage husbands to take care of their health, down to making the doctor's appointments for them and reminding them of it. They also usually do the social labor like community building and king-keeping, and many husbands realize after the divorce they didn't actually have any friends, their wives did. Because to have actual community, you need to be the one putting in the effort and labor and have the EQ skills necessary for it. Women without husbands or kids have more free time, more financial freedom, more social power, better health and less stress, so overall a better quality of life. I'm only speaking from my personal experience here, but I recently lost my grandfather, and as shitty as I feel for thinking it, I genuinely don't think he would have been able to thrive on his own if my grandmother went before him. He worked extremely hard during his lifetime, but in his retirement, which at this point was a very long time ago, my grandmother did basically everything. She cooked, cleaned, laundry, etc. Pretty much all household maintenance was on her. I'm sure he could have figured out to do that stuff on his own, but compared to my grandmother who has been doing that for entire life at this point, I really doubt it would have been an easy adjustment. Even basic life skills aside, my grandmother has way more of a social life. My grandfather loved spending time with his family, which we ditto often, but in terms of friends and socializing he just wasn't into it, which I think can be a struggle in itself. This provider-housekeeper dynamic is pretty common with the older generations in my family, and I genuinely think the men suffer for it when they have no idea how to keep their home or life running after their partner passes. Probably because the wife is not there to take care of them. Same reason women are happier post-divorce, even though they are financially worse off after divorce than men. Same reason there's a loneliness epidemic, because women are giving up on dating or relationships with men in larger numbers. Women don't need us. The opposite is often not true, largely because a lot of men refuse to do basic things. Well, if you've spent all of your 80 years being taken care of by a woman, first your mother and then your wife, and you've never taken the time to learn how to take care of yourself, which is a very common life situation that elderly men find themselves in, then things start to fall apart pretty quickly when your caretaker dies. The same reason married men live longer, their wives take care of them. If no one is taking care of them, they tend to neglect their health. When a husband is the kind of person who doesn't know how to, or doesn't care about, caring for his health, a wife is more likely to see part of her role as taking care of the health of her husband. If the wife dies, the man has no one taking care of his health anymore. I had a male relative whose preferred foods were high fat, high sugar, and red meat. His wife did her best to compensate by preparing only healthful meals. He died first, but I'm sure if widowed he would have stopped eating salads, steamed veggies, and low-fat protein. As a man, I think the answer is we are fucking idiots. Men typically have a lower life expectancy than women already. It would be more surprising if widowed men are drastically outliving widowed women, as it would be a change from that observation. I am a widower. I've seen this discussed at great lengths in the widowed community. The conclusion is usually that men aren't as emotionally fluent, that big boys don't cry, so to speak. This may very well be generational, since that mindset isn't really the norm anymore, but widows are usually older generations. Still, women tend to communicate feelings and empathize more readily, which helps to provide more of a support system in times of need. Because, by and large, men are less capable, less likely, less willing to take care of themselves, especially if they don't have a partner to encourage them either intrinsically or explicitly to do so. Not true for every man, of course, but it's fairly common. My grandfather and grandmother had an unspoken deal where she took care of everything inside the house and he took care of everything outside. He was a gardening whiz, cultivated flowers, potatoes, vegetables, took care of a big lawn and trees meticulously, but couldn't boil an egg or make a cup of coffee by himself. Guess which one managed better without the other? Men have a shorter life expectancy anyways, so statistically they would be dying sooner than women. Say a man and a woman both lose their spouse at 65 years old. The man's life expectancy is 73, and the woman's is 79, so on average women would live longer after being widowed. Also not sure if accurate, but if my spouse dies before me, I am probably going to start smoking and drinking more, haha.